So we're into chapter one. Now, chapter one gets to, we're at the beginning of the book. We're talking about intro to corporate finance. So why do you think we study corporate finance? And Matt said he's had personal finance. Who did you have that with, Matt? Kevin Huff? Or?
Oh, I took it in high school. I didn't take it here.
Oh, okay. Totally different. Totally.
Yep.
Probably on a different level when you take it here, because we get into credit and student loans and debt and insurance and things that you got to look at, like renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, life insurance, and things.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, but they just went over like it would be just introduction of each one of those topics. So like they talked about loans, but they didn't really go in depth about the loans. They just talked about interest rates, principal, stuff like that. Like I get like, I don't know, to someone that's a business major, it's almost like common sense now that like I've gotten this far.
Yeah.
But at the time, I mean, it was kind of insightful information.
Yeah. Yeah. So why do you think we study corporate finance? What do we deal with in corporate finance?
That, but on a corporate level. So like business loans.
On a business level. Okay. So let me ask you this. How many of you guys want to have your own business? How many of you thought about having your own business? Anybody?
I mean, I technically have one. Well, it's more like a side hustle, but I sell shoes.
Sell shoes. You're not one of those like Nike guys, are you? Buy a pair of Nikes for $70 and sell them for 400 or something like
that? I guess you could say I am, but with not just Nike, with Adidas. Basically anything that has a resale value, clothing, shoes, socks, belts, underwear. Yeah, basically like, yeah.
I don't know about that one. Even Omar perked up on that one.
Not like used underwear, but just like, like designer underwear and stuff like that.
Underwear, foot picks, you name it.
Post the link in the bio.
Oh, side hustle. All right. So Matt's got his web thing going on there. Resale business. Anybody else? Nobody wanted to have. So let me ask you this then. So you guys are all business students. Why are you studying business? Ooh, nobody wants to say anything.
I mean, my answer is kind of cliche, but I have an answer.
Go ahead.
To more understand the value of a dollar.
Okay. Well, when we study business, we deal with several things, okay? When we talk about corporate finance, first one is capital budgeting. What capital budgeting is, we basically look at let me get a pen up here. We want to look at long-term investing. Or investments, not investing. I'm going to say investments. So why do we have a business? If we look at Matt's business, Matt, have you been out 321 and seen that Pro-Am Sports on the left?
No, but there is a new shoe store on King Street. I think it's called Kickin' on King.
Yeah.
Or Kicks on King.
That's run by high schoolers.
What's that, Elliot?
That store is run by high schoolers.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet. I just seen it the other day. I was gonna see if they do consignment, but
there you go. What the guy Pro-Am Sports did is he would take things like ASU's uniforms that they aren't going to use anymore, and he would sell those, or equipment that they aren't going to use anymore. So you might be able to buy some Michael Jordan shoes from him and stuff, and maybe they're ones that he was tossing out. He pays pennies for them and then he resells them, right? So any business that we do, first off, you got to think, what does it take to be in business? And so, like in my last class, I had one student who was doing, he's got a software business running, and he's like, well, I just need server space on like AWS. I need some laptops and software packages. Totally different setup. One of the other students had an audio-visual lighting business his family runs. He said they need a warehouse, they need trucks, they got to be able to get lights and equipment, scaffolding, speakers, microphones. Some of that stuff's easy, but then some of it is rather large because he said they deal with large capacity crowds and things like that. And then the other student, they buy and flip houses. Okay. So we look at long-term investments. If we're going to have a business, so Matt, if think of Matt's business, if it grows and grows, maybe now he needs a retail outlet. He's got to have a place to store all the clothing and shoes and all these items he's selling. So
Industrial
now he's
storage
got to have a
cells.
physical presence to store all those. Well, one of the decisions is, does he rent or does he buy? Okay. And there's good and bad points about each of those. If he buys it, he doesn't have to pay rent. The bad thing about buying, though, is say he's out on 321 between Boone and Blown Rock. That's where all the business is right now, right? The 30-year plan for Boone is to make 421 between here and Wilkesboro just as busy as 321 is between here and Blown Rock. So if that's the case, where do you think most of the business is going to go in the next few years? Out on 421. That's where City Hall's moving, the police department's moving, the municipal buildings are all moving out that way. So if Matt decides, hey, I want to move my business over to where everybody else is going to be, if he has a place out on 321, now he's kind of locked into that. And he's either got to try to sell that and then buy another place. If he's renting, he just waits till his lease is up and tells his landlord, hey, I'm out of here. I'm going to the other side of town. And he can, get another place. Again, when you rent, you got to look at now, you got to retrofit that building to fit your needs. If you buy it, are you just going to buy a basic flat piece of land and build your building around it or on that land? Or are you going to go ahead and buy an existing building and fit that to your needs? When we look at capital budget, the cost in rent versus buy is vastly different. Okay. We also have to look at what machinery are we going to buy. I don't know. Matt can process. He probably doesn't need a whole lot of machinery. Maybe he needs something to be able to.
So like how you're talking about the guy that needs like an AWS server and stuff like that. With shoes, it's kind of similar. You have to have an AWS server for each like tool that you use. So I use ShoeBots. So like each one of my ShoeBots, I have to have an AWS server for. So that for me currently, it's like 4 AWS servers, 4 different bots. So there are some like tools you have to get like proxies and stuff like that. It does take some know-how. You basically have to have a computer. If you have a computer, you're good.
Yeah. But for the size you are now, and like you said, this is your side hustle, but what if it grows and all of a sudden you realize, man, this is what I could be doing for real, full time and not have to worry about anything else.
Well, because of COVID, if it wasn't because of COVID, last year, 2019, I made about 6 figures. So, I mean, it can make a lot. It's just the dedication, the time. Since school started back, it's a lot. I don't know. There's a lot that goes on with it. Yeah. COVID's really made some of the warehouses for like StockX and Goat have closed down. So there's just a lot of logistics.
So with our capital budget, what we're looking for is our total investment. How much does it cost to get in business? A lot of times what you'll hear out in the world is you'll hear, what's your total nut? Okay. And what they're talking about is, what's your total dollar amount to get started? What do you have invested in this business? Okay. What do you have to cover? Okay. Then we get to our capital structure. Our capital structure is our capital maker. And this is what we talked about in chapter 7 and 8, debt versus equity. Okay. If we look at business, when we talk about debt, we already talked about some of it. We're either talking business loans from banks or bonds if we're up and running and get bonds going. When we talk about equity, we're talking about stocks. Equity is ownership. Okay. So we're looking at where's the money coming from. So here we get with our capital structure or capital budget, we get our total dollar amount that with our capital structure, that total dollar amount is what makes that up. How much of it's debt? How much of it is equity? How much of it money did we put in ourselves versus how much did we have to go borrow? And then the last one is our working capital. Okay, this is our daily ops money, daily operations money. Okay. What we're talking about here is paid, getting paid, really. One of the things that's different from finance and accounting, a lot of you guys had accounting one, took, accounting one, you did P&Ls and, oh, we made money or we lost money. Quite honestly, in finance, we're not too worried about that. What we worry about is cash flow. Do we have more money coming in than what's going out? If we have more money coming in than going out, guess what? We're making money. We're in good shape. So we worry about cash flow in finance, okay? Not necessarily profit and loss, okay? So one of the things that we look at here, we might look at Matt and Matt, payments. What type of payments do you take?
Well, with Goat and StockX, it kind of goes to just direct deposit. If I do like a local deal, say to someone in Boone, it would be Cash App, Venmo, or cash.
Okay, so he does cash. So do we like cash? Would you guys like, how many of you pay in cash? Probably not many of you, right? What do we say about cash though? Cash is what? Cash is king. Why is cash king?
You can do what you
Because it's
want
in
with
your
it.
hand right then. You don't have to worry about inflation or cost of money, right? If somebody pays Matt cash, then what he can do is take that cash and he can go buy replacement product right now. He could go pay for his server right now. He could go get more inventory right now, right? He's got it in his hand. Any downsides to cash?
It can lose its value.
Yeah, but you're not going to hold on to it long enough for that, really, right? One downside is if I know Matt is doing cash locally and he does local business all in cash, and I know they have Venmo and all that where it's all digital. Maybe I go introduce myself to Matt and introduce Matt to my two friends, Smith and Wesson, and ask him to introduce the three of us to his friends, Franklin, Grant, and Jackson. That's a $150 and $20 bill if you're not familiar with those, right? Matt's going to give up those friends real quick, probably, if he meets Smith and Wesson, don't you think?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, here you go. That's the one downside to cash. I worked one place where they didn't. It was at Christmas time, and they didn't take the deposits to the bank over the weekend. We went to the bank Monday morning with over $250,000 in cash. You want to talk about nervous? We called the police department and had them escort us to the bank. Okay. What other types of payments are there? What do you guys use?
Credit.
Credit. Okay, is that good?
Depends for who.
Do you like taking credit, Matt?
I mean, for me personally, since I take it, it would just be like cash for me. But for the person that's using it as credit, to them, it's debt.
Well, when we talk credit, let's talk. Well, this is either credit or debit cards, right? We're talking cards. So the bad thing about it is anytime, what's the downside to using cards?
Processing fees, processing times, delays. It only happens on business days. So if you get a payment on the weekend, you're gonna have to wait till the next business day before it processes.
Exactly. And the other thing, like he was saying, fees, right? So if Matt sells me a pair of shoes and they're $100 and I pay with my credit card or my debit card, Matt, do you get $100?
Nope, they take a 3% fee, so I'd get $97.
And it depends on which card it is or which company, right? That's why a lot of people that have Discover cards or Amex cards, you don't see a lot of business taking them because their fees are up to 7 or 8%. If Discover card is giving you 5% of your purchase back, where do you think that money's coming from? It's coming from Matt. So he sells you something for $100. He's only going to get $92 or $93 of it because 5 of that's going back to you. And then the company's keeping the difference. Okay. So that's where things like Square came about, because even Visa or MasterCard, depending on the number of transactions you do, they take anywhere from like 2 to 2.5, 3 to 5%. Much better than Visa or Discover, but still. So Square came in and said, hey, we're only going to charge you 2.75%. So a lot of people take Square or use Square, and that was plugged into your phone or your tablet or whatever, then you could take payments anywhere, right? The other thing is checks. You know, if you look at checks, you got to think about, do they bounce and all that? Don't have to as much anymore because they have the check readers. Your checking, if you look at your check, your account is actually where your account number is on your check is actually like the strip on your credit card. That account number is magnetized. They run it through a machine. It automatically taps to your bank and says, hey, Omar's check isn't good. Don't let him buy these groceries. Or if it is good, it'll run through. And then if you notice, they put it in there and it prints the check out and all that stuff for you. Okay. So they've kind of taken away some of the risk with checks. But so those are some of the things that you have to work with. So when we're thinking about working capital, like Matt said, with debit cards or plastic, if it's a weekend, you might not get paid till Monday night because they're going to gather those transactions Monday, process them Monday night, and generally after midnight sometime or 2 in the morning. So he might not get paid till Tuesday. A lot better than it used to be. They used to have where you'd may get a receipt and you'd have to mail in your receipts every so often, and you'd get paid once a month or every 2 weeks or something like that, depending on how many you sent in. So we have the working capital. Everybody good there? Any questions on capital budget, capital structure, working capital? All right. So now that we're talking about business, what forms of business are there? What are the 3 forms of business?
Sole proprietorship,
Partnership and
limited liability corporation. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Sole proprietorship.
Wouldn't there be like S Corp, C Corp, stuff like that too? Or would that not count?
Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so Wilson, what's good about sole proprietorship?
It's just one person.
One person.
You're not taxed multiple times like a corporation. It's like tax benefits.
Yeah, basically the company's income is your income. Okay, so it's only taxed once.
More proprietorship than any other business. You own the business yourself, so like you're not going through other people to make decisions.
Exactly. Yeah. Raising capital is a little hard because it's really pretty much how much can you put in it, right? So you're kind of limited on your capital, but you also have unlimited liability because it's solely your company. So you have complete liability for that company, right? Okay. What about partnerships? You guys mentioned partnerships.
A little bit less liability because it's you and another person at least. A little bit less capital because it's you and another person.
There you go.
But also you have to share in gains and losses. So
yeah, there's very good, very good. There's a general partnership and a limited liability partnership, or a limited partner. Okay. With the general partnership, basically everything's equal. Hey, we're partners, 50-50. A little bit easier to raise capital, not much, because now there's 2 of us. The liability, though, should be split. But let's say one partner spends their cash crazily and the other partner kind of handles it properly. Then when the situation hits the fan, as they say, right, the one guy's going to be like, hey, I don't have any money. It's gone. So I'm out. You got to hit the other guy. So the other partner might end up taking on all the liability. With a limited partner, if for a limited partner, if it was, hey, I just gave Matt $10,000 to help them buy inventory to turn around and sell on the market, as long as he's giving me the money and I'm done, I don't help do anything else, then if something happens, I'm only out my $10,000. That's the end of my liability, right? But if I'm out there going, hey, here's bringing customers in or going getting inventory or helping the business, now I'm not a limited partner anymore. I'm a general partner. The other problem with partnerships is kind of like what Matt was saying. Generally, they'll start out as a side thing, side hustle, as he put it, and hey, everything's good. We're working together. We're cohesive, and the business grows and grows and grows and gets bigger, right? What happens now if Matt wants out? I don't know anything about selling that. I just help put up the money to get us started. Matt handles all the the server stuff and getting all the stuff, and I handle shipping it out, but I don't know anything about getting it and putting it on the web and all that. So if Matt wants out, what happens to our partnership? Is it over?
Unless you can find someone else with the resources and skills.
Yeah. Yeah, so the partnership, but hey, Matt, I don't want the business to end. Even if you want out, I don't want the business to end, right? And the problem is, it's like, hey, this started as our side hustle, and it was all fun and games, and wow, it got real big, and we didn't foresee one of us wanting to get out, right? Or what happens, heaven forbid, one of them dies. So if I keel over and my wife goes, hey, Matt, your guys grew the business, and that money kind of helped keep little Brian fed and kept food on their clothes, food on the table and clothes on their back. So you're going to keep the checks coming, right, Matt?
I couldn't. Well, I would just, in that situation, honestly, I would just offer to buy out his part and then resell that part of the company to someone that does have that knowledge.
Hopefully, right? But a lot of times, they don't think about that, and you don't come up with. Generally, when you're selling a business, there's a formula that fits, and you may, like restaurants and things, it's 40 times the average weekly sales, or 20 times your monthly sales. Comes out to about the same within a few $1,000s. But hopefully you go into it ahead of time and have that thought out. A lot of times with partnerships, you don't, and you don't deal with issues until they arise. And that's one reason I would recommend people avoid partnerships. It's kind of like dating. Think about when you dated somebody, right? It was kind of like, maybe you're just hanging out and things are kind of fun, and you go out and you do things, and then all of a sudden you realize, man, this is getting to be a little bit more. Maybe this is an exclusive thing, right? And let's be honest. When you date, there's only two outcomes. You either break up or you get married. That's it. I mean, it's not, with a partnership, it's kind of the same way. You either are married to each other till the end, or you break it up and bust the relationship up, right? And when you're dating and the dating comes to an end, it's kind of like when a partnership comes to an end. If Matt says, hey, I've done all I want and I'm out, I'm wanting to go explore my horizons, the one partner, he's like, whoo, I'm out of here, new, fresh air, new adventures. And the other person sitting there going, where did that come from? I thought everything was great. What do you mean we're breaking up, right? And you guys have, this has happened to y'all, and some of you guys have, and you probably have been on both sides of the coin, unfortunately, right? And it's always better to be the one like, woohoo, it's over, rather than what? and it happens. But I would recommend you avoid partnerships. Then you guys mentioned corporations, okay? So let's talk about corporations. First off, look at page 3, figure 1.1. There you have a corporate sample organizational chart. Quite honestly, this works with every business and works with just about every. Somebody's got to be accountable, okay? So all business works this way, government works this way, any successful organization works this way, right? There's one president of the U.S., there's one chancellor of Appalachian State University, there's one president of the UNC system. Somebody's got to be accountable, okay? And you can kind of see, just be familiar with that organizational chart.
But then there's boards that keep those people accountable too. So
are there? We're going to talk about that in just a minute here, Matt. But let's in fact, so what's the good thing about corporations?
They have a board of trustees.
Okay, they have a board. And we may find that good or bad. We'll see in just a minute.
Corporations are treated as a legal entity.
There you go, Wilson. When you start a corporation, and like Matt was saying, there's different types of corporations. There's S corps, basically a sole proprietorship corporation, so it's one person. There's LLCs, limited liability corporations. There's a number of different corporations. But like Wilson said, when you start a corporation, you basically have birthed a person. You get a federal employment identification number, which is just like a social security number. Okay. That corporation pays taxes. Raising capital is easy. You know, it's easier to find 1,000 people with $1,000 than it is to find one person with $1 million to risk on a business venture, isn't it? You know, if it's like, hey, honey, I'm investing $1,000 with Matt because he's got this clothing thing side hustle going on, and I think it's going to really take off. If I lose the grand, I don't have to look at the kids and go, hey, you're hungry and we have to move out. Whereas if I go, hey, I got to invest $1 million with this guy. If something doesn't go right, we may lose the house and no food, no clothes. That's a totally different story, right? So raising capital is easy. And then if I want to get out or somebody wants out, all I got to do is find somebody to buy my shares and I'm on, and nothing happens. The business doesn't miss a beat. Matt keeps going. Business keeps going as normal. Okay. So those are some of the good things. Some of the bad things, like Matt was saying, though, hey, look, there's a board of directors. Well, let me ask you this. Who do you think is on the board of directors of large corporations?
Stockholders.
Maybe. But there aren't that many. I mean, you're talking corporations that have millions and millions of shares of stock out there. And so we got to make a decision that is $100 million decision. How many people do you think understand the weight or the gravity of making a decision that involves $100 million?
Well, sometimes they have investors on the board. Sometimes they have people that actually work in the higher positions of the company on the board, like presidents or CEOs, executives, etc.
Yeah.
So usually people within the company or heavily invested in the company.
You might have some big investment firms on the board, representative on the board, yes. But generally, who's on the board are other CEOs of other companies, because it's like, you know, if I was going to go to war, I wouldn't go ask somebody off the street, hey, we're going to go to war and understand we're going to lose a quarter of the people that's involved. Can you help me make a decision on that? They aren't going to understand that, right? Who am I going to go to? I'm going to go to somebody else who has some experience with that and understands the ramifications of that and writing letters to people. And, you know, if we're cutting out $100 million off our business, somebody's losing their job. And at a corporate level, it's easy to do because you randomize it, put it in the computer, and it spits out and says, Omar, you just got your pink slip. Sorry. Versus if it's a smaller business and I know Omar and I know his wife and kids and everything, and I got to go to him and go, hey, Omar, business hasn't been good. COVID's kicked our butt and I got to let you go. That's a totally different decision, right? Same outcome. And let me tell you, it is gut wrenching. And I've had the unfortunate opportunity to do that. Okay. But most of the time, the people on the board are people that are CEOs of other companies who understand. You got to have people who are in their industry, who understand what's going on with you in your industry, understand what's going on in the business world in general. Okay. And so if they're on my board, guess what the situation is? I'm probably on their board. So think about this. What do most CEOs in the US make?
A whole lot.
A lot of money, right? Okay. Is that necessarily the best thing? If we look at this, take a look at page 9. Okay. Look at the orange box at the top of page 9. And this is the goal of financial management. This is why all you guys are studying business. We didn't get into business so we wouldn't make money. We got into business to understand how business works and to be able to make a lot of income and take care of our families, right? The goal of financial management is to maximize current value per share of the existing stock. You want to put that in a nutshell, the goal of financial management is to maximize shareholder wealth. Okay. So if the CEO or the board is voting the CEO to make $20 million, is that necessarily maximizing shareholder wealth? It could be.
So I'm very confused. If some corporations work for other boards of other corporations, then wouldn't that technically make it just an oligarchy? Because couldn't they just work together in a sense under, low key?
Gee, I don't know. What do you think on social media right now when they're talking about, they have fact checkers, or they're censoring certain people off the site? Is that really what should be going on?
For some people, yes.
Really? If it's open and, it's open communication and available to everybody, just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean that I should, doesn't mean what you're saying isn't valid. It's just, I don't agree with you.
But what if what they're saying is not valid and is spreading false information? And
yeah, like what if I was to come here today and be like, aliens, they just can't, I just seen an alien today, but I didn't see an alien today, but I just came here and I was adamant that I seen an alien.
My thing
Maybe
is,
you did.
who freaking cares? Words are just words. Like,
Exactly.
sorry.
That's your opinion, right? And maybe so here's the thing and where I was going with that. So you asked, is that an oligarchy, right? So Matt, all these people on the screen are on your board and you're on their board. Now, when it comes time and you're sitting there going, hey guys, this company has done really well and I think I deserve a raise. Omar, are you going to vote him a raise?
Well, what if it comes around his time, then he wants the raise, you know what I mean? And I bet he better give me the raise if he wants his raise next year.
Exactly. So, you're sitting there and they're voting, right? And Omar and Wilson are like, no, Matt doesn't deserve a raise. And then they get to their company and it's like the board's sitting there deciding, well, Omar, it's time for us to decide on your raise. Matt's sitting there going, wait a minute, Omar voted my raise down. So I'm not going to vote for Omar's raise. And then when it comes time for Wilson's board meeting and they're like, hey, we're voting on a raise for Wilson. Matt's sitting there going, well, he voted against mine. So what you have here is what is called an agency issue, right? Okay. Look at the NFL. Roger Goodell got $50 million a year. And he wanted them to pay for his health insurance and give him a private jet. It's like, dude, you're making $50 million a year. I think you can afford $2,000 a month for health insurance from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Okay. The other side of that too is, okay, let's say now, wow, we got a situation where, hey, the company's not doing so well, Matt, and we've been struggling and we've tried to hang in there with you for the past 3 years, but things just haven't gone your way and your plans haven't worked out. And maybe it's time you go find another job. Omar, Wilson, are you going to tell Matt, hey, pack your stuff and be out of here by noon? We don't want to see you anymore. Because what's going to happen then if something goes wrong at your company? Right? They used to call these golden parachutes. Okay. You want an example of one? Hewlett Packard, if you guys remember, Carly Fioroni, I think her name was. She ran for president a few years ago. She got fired from Hewlett Packard and they told her, here's $10 million, please go away. I don't know about you guys, but I might like to try to be that bad at my job.
Well, wouldn't that just be technically like her severance?
Her
Like that would've
severance,
been
yeah.
A severance package of $2 million.
But think about it. No, it was 10 million.
Oh, 10 million?
Yeah, $10 million. But think about it. Our goal is to maximize shareholder wealth. So the company was being run so poorly, it was better to give her $10 million and ask her to leave than to keep her on the board of the company. But again, this goes to just because you got fired, Matt, doesn't mean now you're off Omar and Wilson's boards. So if something happens to them and you're sitting there going, Omar's looking, going, hey, I'm getting fired. And Matt, you're part of the process. Remember, I kind of gave you $10 million and helped you cushion your fall with your family and stuff. Can you look at Omar and go, hey, Omar, I don't care about that. Get out by noon. I don't want to see you anymore. You might be able to, but boy, that would take some big ones. You know, you've got some intestinal fortitude to be able to do that to somebody who looked after you. And that's one of the things you see with these boards, right?
So then basically, so essentially what you're saying is it eases the blow if you give them money when you tell them to go home.
Oh yeah, that's why we give severance packages and stuff, you know? But do we need to give them million? I mean, these are people that have made millions of dollars and invested. The other part of it too, and I love this part. You guys remember when you probably don't, because this was, I think, before you guys were born. Steve Jobs left Apple, and Apple stock went in the toilet. And then they came back because Steve Jobs was like, we do one thing and we do one thing right. When he came back, they had something like 350 projects going. He came back and he said, we're cutting it to 10, and we're going to do those 10 projects exquisitely correct. The others are gone. And he came back and everybody said he's working for $1. Do you think Steve Jobs, one of the richest men in the world, was actually going to work for $1 a year at Apple? No. But unfortunately, and this kind of goes back to your thought process earlier, Wilson. You know, people were like, oh my God, he's such a benevolent CEO. Every CEO needs to do what he's doing and work for $1. They were stupid. And they didn't know what's going on. He didn't work for $1. And if you believe that, you're crazy. They gave him 1 million shares of stock, and the stock was worth like $100 at the time. So when he came back, everybody's like, wow, they cut their focus down to 10 products. They did those 10 things exceptionally well. And then they came out with the iPhone, and everybody flocked to the iPhone and bought a $1,000 iPhone because they thought Steve Jobs was working for $1. And the stock went from $100 to 150. And he's like, thank you. My pay just increased 50%, and now I'm making 75 million a year. Please go out and buy more phones. Okay? So when you hear that stuff on the news, understand that is not what is happening. Tesla, you know, why is Elon Musk the highest paid person or the richest person in the world right now? Because he gets a benefit, or a what did they call it? Let me see if I can remember the right term. He was given 35,000 shares of Tesla stock each quarter. Beneficiary. Right? So that is part of his pay. And all these, you know, everybody thought, oh my God, Steve Jobs is making $1. No, he wasn't. And they went out and bought Apple stuff because they thought he was so benevolent. No, he wasn't. And it worked. Stock went up. He got a whole lot more money. Then he sells the stock, cashes all that in, and then they give him that same amount next year.
Wait, did they give him the stock on an annual?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, I was thinking maybe he lived off the dividends, but Apple doesn't pay that too much in dividends, but I guess in a great amount, it would be a lot.
No, they aren't. He's not going to live off that. You're talking about a guy that's worth billions of dollars. You think he's going to live off $1 million a year in dividends? Shoot, no. Okay. So that's some of the things that you have with the agency issue and with corporations. Okay. So make sure you pay attention to that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about this right here. Okay. This is on page 14. So what we have here is, I thought I got rid of all my markings here, but I didn't. So we're talking about cash flow to firms, okay, and how this works. So what we see here in the blue box, that is all our money. That's stocks, bonds, business loans, angel funding, Angel funding are people that's your family and friends who believe in you and want to help you out. They give you money and really don't expect anything back for it, right? May or may not get the money. If they lose it, they're not going to hound you for it or anything else. Okay. You can see the flow from this chart. The firm takes the money and they go invest in assets and basically go do what they do. Okay. Create products, sell product. Matt takes that money, buys his shoes and clothing and stuff, and he turns around and sells it. Notice now that he's done that, the money's got to go somewhere, because if he didn't put all the money in, he's not entitled to all the money. So we got to pay the people that gave us the money to get into business. You can see the first place it goes is the government. Got to pay the taxes and things like that, right? Then we see we got dividends and debt payment. So now this goes to our stockholders and bondholders. What do they do with the money? Why did we want the bond payment, the coupon payments every 6 months? So we can reinvest that cash, right? So that's the beautiful thing about capitalism, is it's designed to keep investing in business and new business and keep things going and growing our economy. That's what that's why our system is one of the best, if actually the best in the world. That's why people come here, right? Okay, so we get the dividends, we reinvest it into new businesses. We can invest in Matt or whoever, and that business takes off. We take that money and invest in somebody else and help their business grow, right? You can see the biggest arrow though right here. Look at where's that business go? Where's that money going? Back into the business. This is very important. This is what we call plowback. Okay. We're growing the business. This is why Amazon, when they first started, Bezos said, hey guys, if you invested with me, we're not going to make money for 10 years. I'm going to take that money, reinvest it into the company. We're going to grow the company, develop the company. Now, those first investors, I'm sure a lot of people looked at them and said, you're nuts. I'm not going to invest in you if you're not going to make money for 10 years. The ones that did, you think they're happy? Yeah, they're probably drinking frozen umbrella drinks somewhere on the beach somewhere, okay? But this is called plowback. It's going back into the company. We'll call it retained earnings in chapter 2 when we get to that, okay? So we're reinvesting into our company. We're using not only investment money from stockholders and people that give us loans, but we're also using money from the operations of the company to grow our company. And you'll see how that works in the next chapter, in chapter 2, okay? So this is how the markets generally work. The first one we have is what we call a primary market. The primary market, okay, the business benefits directly. Sorry, I'm not spelling that too right, or directly, okay? Let's say, anybody know Alibaba? Anybody heard of Alibaba? You know what that is? Basically the Amazon of China, only they expanded it. They don't want to just sell to me and you. They went business to business. So Mac could buy 100 t-shirts or 1,000 t-shirts, and he could have 2 or 3 locations, and so they would supply his other locations, right? Or he could buy 1 shirt and turn around and sell it however. Okay, so Alibaba, when they were growing and they needed money, the primary market is generally going to be business or banks, big banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase Manhattan, things like that, right? So let's say they needed $1 billion. They came over and talked to our banks and said, we need $1 billion because we're the Amazon of China. You think the banks were excited? I mean, look what Amazon did with 350,000 people here in the US. Could you imagine 3 times that potential in China? They were all over it and gave them the money. Hey, no problem. Here you go. Go do your thing. Now, do you think banks want to be in the stockholder business? No, it would take a long time to get $1 billion back on dividends, right? So what they do is they come over here to the secondary market. And that's things like the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ that we talked about, okay? Banks are in the finance business. So they did what they call an IPO, initial public offering. Okay. And the day that was supposed to happen, I had a class at like 10:30 or something like that. And the market's open at 9:30. I had my account all set up. I was ready to go. I was going to jump into Alibaba. At 9:30, they came on and said, hey, we got a few things that we got to work out. This is going to happen. We're not quite ready to go. So what do you think happened to Alibaba's stock price over that time frame? Because they were touting it all this whole time. So the stock goes up, right? 10:30, they come on and say, hey, we thought it was going to be 10:30. Not going to happen. We got a few more things that we got to work out. It's going to be a little bit. Hang in there. We're going to have the IPO. Kept talking about how great Alibaba was, all the things. What do you think happened to the price? It kept going up. They finally came out at 12:30. Okay. Originally at 9:30, they were talking about being at $60 a share. They opened up at 12:30 at $90 a share. So think about this. The bank gave Alibaba $1 billion. They probably bought it for $50 a share. Turned around and sold it to us on the secondary market for $90 a share. Was the bank happy? Yeah, they just went from $1 billion to roughly not quite $2 billion. So they almost doubled their money just like that. Okay. So we're buying all this. Now, what happens is we own that stock. So Alibaba is going to pay us dividends and we take that and reinvest. So this whole thing kind of ends up being a perpetual motion machine, if you want to get it, if you want to call it that. Okay. All right. So that's the market, the flow of money through the market, how it keeps going. We've got the primary market. That's going to be the business, benefits directly, generally dealing with the banks. You have the secondary market. That's where you and I are going to buy and sell the stock on the stock exchange or on the NASDAQ, one of the two, okay, or over the counter, depending on the stock. So any questions on that?
I just had a question. I remember seeing something about the primary and secondary market on the last test. Was that still, so that's still relevant? It's just a little different for this chapter.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, primary markets, the business gets the money and handles it, you know. The second, what happens with unfortunately, Kaylee, you and I aren't going to have enough money. I hope one day you will. I won't. Hopefully one day you'll take this knowledge and that you're getting from ASU and have a lot of zeros at the end of your bank account. So if Matt wants to start his business, he can come to you and say, hey, I need $100 million. And you can go, here it is. Then you would benefit solely from that, right? Most of the time, though, you don't want to take that on. So what you would do is turn around and sell it to other people and jack that price up so you get your money back and pass the risk on to them. And that's what the banks do. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right. So guys, really that's all of chapter 1. Okay. So what I need you to do, make sure you understand. I didn't go through all the benefits of the 3 forms of business. Make sure you guys get the advantages and disadvantages of each of those: sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation. Okay, we covered some of them, but just kind of glance through the chapter and make sure you get the rest of those. Okay. Any other questions? Is everybody good? All right, don't forget your quiz for chapter 1 is due Thursday. So knock that out. Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, guys, I'll see you Thursday. Have a good couple days. I think the weather's supposed to be great, so hopefully we can get outside and enjoy some of it. Okay. So take care, and I will see you all Thursday.
Mr. B, I just had a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just looking ahead, is this chapter going to be like mostly conceptual as well? Just because I know like today was kind of a lot of definitions and just like the cycle. So is this next exam, I guess,